Well, the first day of Ecogen 2011 is now drawing to a close here in Brisbane, and the sun is falling fast. So I thought I would share with you very quickly a couple of the key themes which have come out of the conference today. And the first one is a very Australian problem, and that's a problem of too much policy being implemented by government both at a federal and at a state level. And what that's actually done is it's resulted in a lack of clarity about where the industry is going. And when you've got a lack of clarity, that leads to uncertainty, and that results in a lack of investment, particularly for large-scale developments. And that's exactly what they've seen. But conversely, what's also happened is there's also been a sudden rush for small-scale solar. And when I say small-scale, I mean at a household level. And there's been a massive increase in the amount of small-scale solar invested in, and particularly here in Queensland. And they don't call it the Sunshine State for nothing. And what that's done is it's meant that they've created an industry which is not sustainable. And this morning it was confirmed in the conference that they're anticipating that the solar energy bubble here in Australia is about to burst. So massive growth from 2009 to 2010, but 2011 to 2012 there will be a sudden crash in that particular energy market. The winner of that particular debate is likely to be wind, with the federal government introducing renewable energy targets which are going to result in more certainty about long-term investment, and that's drawing more money into wind. So we're expecting to see a lot more wind farms built in Australia over the next few years. The second theme which has come across today is one which we recognise very clearly from the work that we're doing in the United Kingdom. The similarity is quite striking. There's a lot of fundamental issues of uncertainty and lack of argument from the development side, which is resulting in developments failing. And these are the types of issues which you will have heard me banging on about time and time again, not least of which is people's fears, perceived fears about impacts on health, and people's fears about the impact of wind farm development on house prices. And as a consequence of that has meant that there's been increasing resistance to the few wind farms that have been trying to be developed here in Australia over the last few years. Interestingly, the Landscape Guardian group has been campaigning against a wind farm development in Victoria, and they were successful at preventing what was technically an extremely good wind farm development from actually going ahead. It's actually died as a project now. So there's a lot of these issues that we're dealing with in the UK that they still have to deal with here in Australia. Now what that says to me is that as an industry, at a global level, we must get together and find the arguments to kill once and for all these golden arrows that are held by the opposition groups, which they fire time and time again into our projects. And things such as health impacts, impacts on house prices, and other nuisance issues, say to do with television transmission and noise, we must have the definitive arguments to put those all to shame. And the final issue, which is very topical here in Australia, is that to do with climate change. The Minister for Energy this morning was making it very clear that in Australia, and particularly in Queensland, you do not have to explain to the public about the association between human activity and climate change. The cyclones and flooding that they had here in Brisbane and in Queensland earlier this year has meant that the population is very aware of the impact of human activity on climate in a way that we don't have to put that argument across. That gives them an advantage when they're actually talking to people about the need for renewable energy. And hopefully, by building on that area and having some of the core arguments to kill the nuisance issues and securing long-term investment will mean that there'll be quite a successful time over the next few years for wind farm development. I'll fill you in with a second report tomorrow where we're focusing in on the section that I'm chairing, which is going to be to do specifically with wind developments, where we're looking at the impact of new technology, with how you engage with communities more effectively, and actually going back to this terrible confusion which has been created around policy. So I'll report back on that tomorrow.